Welcome to the Spurs Roundtable, powered by Project Spurs. I am your host, Jeff Garcia, and with the regular season winding down, with 2 games left, is it time for the Spurs to rest everybody now that they have clinched the top seed? Talk about that and a lot more. I am joined by Chelsea Torres and, of course, Stephen Anderson, again, making his second time. No, how'd the first time go for you?
Went pretty well.
Went pretty good, yeah. Yeah, and we don't have to compete with your height anymore, so that's even better. But like I said, the Spurs have wrapped up the top seed in the NBA, I believe. So they have, well, all roads go through San Antonio now. But the question remains, is it time to just shut it down? Rest everybody, at least your main guns, heading into the postseason. Rest versus rust. We hear this all the time. Stephen, what are your thoughts?
Well, Jeff, you see, like you say you see the argument rest versus rest all the time, and you do. And you got to remember Manu Ginobili against Phoenix. We all know what happened with the broken arm when Pop decided to play him. So I'm a little bit iffy on it because if you have a rest versus rest issue, if Pop decides to rest the big 3 plus Kawhi, as we've heard he may or may not do, you're going to have those guys have potentially about a week and a couple of days off.
But with a core like that, with a core such as TD, Manu, and of course Tony Parker, who has a lot of miles on his legs despite his young age, this core team, and I believe that they nearly need to have the rest, but then rust may set in.
I think, if anything, what we should do if we are going to rest them, maybe rest them for partial of the game. Maybe we can have them play for only 1 quarter or, you know, a quarter and a half. That way they're at least getting some play, but they're not going to be completely
that brings
out.
up something, though, because the next game they have is against Houston, a team they have not beaten. And you would want maybe your top guns out there to just send a message to Houston.
Well, I mean, does it really matter, though, if they beat Houston or not? I mean, they already clinched the #1 seed. They have home court throughout the playoffs and the NBA Finals. They really don't have anything left to prove, at least right now. They have, of course, 16 games to win once the playoffs start. And, you know, potentially all those could be at home.
No, but well, how much would chemistry be affected? Do you think that's going to be really an issue if a Popovich-led Spurs team is going to shut down the big 3 plus Kawhi?
I don't think the chemistry will be affected. It'd be nice to see how we could play against them one more time before playoffs come. But I don't think that it's going to be a big factor, and it's not going to exactly say, oh, you know, if they lose, we're going to lose the whole round against Houston. It's not that big of a concern.
Well, let's just say they shut it down, and they go into Houston, you know, losing. That'd be a sweep at the hands of the Rockets. That might be a huge mental edge you're giving to Houston, or you don't just worry about that at all at this point of the season.
I really wouldn't worry about it at this point. I mean, they've already beaten us 3 times. And by now, if they really need a mental edge to really focus on being the Spurs, then it's not really that much of a difference. The Spurs, they don't really focus on the type of stuff, the whole mental game of it. They focus on game by game, what they need to do. And I really don't think they care if Houston's beaten 3 times or potentially 4.
You know, I'm on the side of rest. We had an injury scare with Tony Parker recently. Manu Ginobili had a recent injury. And, of course, the big one that I think everybody in San Antonio almost fell out of their seats when Tim Duncan got up clutching his knee, against the Mavericks. And that, even as much as you see the big 3 hurting like that, you're still saying, you know, just shut them down or give them something just, you know, just enough to just keep going.
I say if Pop is going to play them, you don't want to have another Manu Ginobili incident. I say play them a quarter, maybe 5 minutes first quarter, and then rest them, and then second half, 5 minutes.
But they haven't really finished the season that strong. Coming off the 19-game winning streak, you know, they have been kind of resting the big 3 plus Kawhi sometimes, and we've seen kind of an up and down end to the season. That any concern?
Not at all. Especially not right now. We only have 2 games
Even with the
left.
loss to Minnesota, the way they lost to the Timberwolves by 20-something points.
I know. I mean, that's pretty bad, but it's not that much of a concern. I mean, like Stephen was saying, we are going in, you know, game by game, and right now the big picture is the playoffs. We already clinched #1 for the whole entire NBA. So now, like you said, we have home court advantage for all the playoffs. It's not really a concern.
Even you're losing to an Oklahoma City Thunder game, like Thunder team towards the end of the season, that's still not a concern.
Not really, because I mean, again, like I said last week, you have to look at that schedule. The Spurs were on a 5-game, 7-night stretch. The second night of a back-to-back, the Thunder had 3 days off. Against Minnesota, mentally they weren't there. I mean, it was obvious they were making plays, turning the ball over, and it's very uncharacteristic of the Spurs to do that. And you have to also think about this. That game, that was, I call it the smoke out game. It was smoked out against, you know, in Mexico City. You know, they you don't want another road game.
Right.
And that's exactly what the Spurs got. So it's not a concern because mentally they weren't there. And the Thunder, that was a scheduled loss anyway.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I kind of like the rest aspect of it. You know, one, you give your main core guys some time for a breather, like you said, almost close to over a week. Yeah. And you also give the young guys a lot more experience. Corey Joseph, Austin Day, and you know, Baines, should he come back before the end of the season. I like the real game experience a lot of these bench players will be able to get.
I agree with you, but Pop is very good at managing everybody's minutes. And I think, you know, that's the biggest concern right now is he going to rest, you know, the top three. But I think, just like Stephen was saying, like I mentioned before, he'll probably have them play a quarter, maybe first 5 minutes, maybe sometime, you know, in the second quarter, but it's not going to be anything detrimental. It's going to be where they can at least get some rest, but they're not going to be completely rusty come playoffs.
Well, regardless, you know, they are going to finish with the number 1 seed no matter what, but now just comes the question, who's it going to be? And right now, it's more than likely going to come down to Memphis or Phoenix. Now, I know we touched on this the last show, but, and of course, I think, Steve, you're saying Dallas may have a shot, but, you know,
not likely
at falling to 8. But, yeah, Memphis or Phoenix are going to get one of the teams going to first-round date against San Antonio. You have a Memphis team, which the Spurs had swept this season, and, of course, a Phoenix team that seems to give this Spurs team a lot of headaches. Look what happened the last game at home. They survived a huge scare. Memphis or Phoenix, who do you want to see in the first round?
I like to see Memphis, just because I think it'd be interesting. I don't think it's going to be a hard series for us to win. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a walk in the park, but it'll be an interesting round 1 for us.
And of course, you're going to go with Phoenix, right?
Yes.
Because I knew it.
I love Chelsea, but I disagree with her on this. I would like to see Phoenix. And you pointed out the game on Friday. And you got to realize, Jeff, that was also a back-to-back game for the Spurs. They played Dallas the night before on Thursday. They had, basically in Dallas, a must-win that game. If they didn't win that game against Dallas, their lead in the West would have gone down. And the Thunder, who we know did win against the Pelicans that day.
And you're not concerned at Memphis' size. That's always an issue heading into a game, at least a series versus Memphis.
I'm not really concerned about Memphis' size because this is not the same Memphis Grizzlies team that beat the Spurs when the Spurs were number 1 and Memphis was number 8, and I believe it was 2011. It is not that same team. That team was more aggressive. They were in the paint more. They had much more depth than they do now. Their bench now is completely gone, basically. They've got Rudy Gay is out of Memphis. Right. You have Tayshaun Prince, who replaced him, who is a little bit on the older side. So that bench, core bench, is gone. No more O.J. Mayo either.
Right, and Phoenix is running gun, a little more looser style, flashing players. You know, Goran Dragic seems to have career nights versus the Spurs. Gerald Green seems to be rejuvenated this season. You know, this is a Phoenix team that I think is a little more scarier than Memphis.
I do agree that they're a little bit scarier, but I just don't think they're much of a concern for the Spurs. The only reason why I pick Memphis is I think that, just like, you know, what Stephen was saying, they don't have the key players, but they also have Zach Randolph, and, you know, we've played him before, and he's not really that much of a threat, but when he gets his head into the game, he can be. He can do something against the Spurs. Same with Conley, you know, he can get around and make shots when he wants to. But I don't think that that Phoenix are going to be...
Yeah. Go ahead.
But I was just going to say that you also, with Phoenix, this group, we all know the Spurs-Suns history. It was a great rivalry whenever back in the day, but now this Phoenix team is not that same Phoenix team. You know, no more Nash, no more Boris Dio, who's now here, no more, you know, all those players that were there now are gone. This core Phoenix team we see now has not been in this situation before.
Right, and I think that the way this make up the Spurs team, I think they can adapt to either a slow down tempo game, which Memphis was going to do, and of course Phoenix is going to want to run. Parker, Corey Joseph, Patty Mills. I think Patty Mills might thrive in a kind of up and down series with Phoenix. Nonetheless, though, you know, if in the off chance Dallas does slip to 8, are we concerned about Dallas at all?
No, not at all, because Dallas, look what they did. Look what we did.
Right.
We swept them in the season, and I mean Dallas again. This is not the same Dallas team. No more Jason Terry. No more. It's just dirt.
Well, maybe Spurs fans want to see Dallas just to stick it to Dwan Blair one more time. You know, the way he exited out. But would Dallas concern you? Should for some reason they fall to 8?
No, I'm not concerned by Dallas by any means.
All right, why don't you tell that to Mark Cuban right now? Touch his face at the
Mark Cuban, I am not concerned about Dallas by any means.
Look at that here. All right, well, those are our thoughts on the Spurs finishing out this 2013-2014 season. And, of course, the playoff preview, you know, who we're going to face, Memphis or Phoenix. So make sure to go out to ProjectSpurs.com, leave your comments, and let us know what you think on these topics. But for Chelsea Torres and Stephen Anderson, I'm Jeff Garcia. Thanks again for watching the Spurs Roundtable.